All right, welcome to another episode of Key Biscayne Stories where neighbors meet neighbors. Today we have Mr. B, also known as Rodrigo Bustamante. Mr. B grew up here in the Key and also was a teacher at Agnes Academy for 33 years. Before we talk to Mr. B, we have a quick word from our sponsors. The Academy of Martial Arts in Key Biscayne, more commonly known as RDCA, is proud to have served as Island Paradise for 27 years. Join them for a free introductory class to kickstart your martial arts journey. RDCA is a family-run business headed by Sensei Robert Dusoglu with his daughter and son. Morgan and Derek, both senseis as well. They use martial arts, elite conditioning, and life quests, their self-guided enlightenment course to forge a stronger you. With over 100 years of combined martial arts experience between the Dusoglu senseis, RDCA provides a holistic approach to self-defense, covering a unique blend of stand-up, close-quarter combatives, technical groundwork, weapon training, and traditional form. Over 3,000 students have walked through their doors and trained on the mat at RDCA in the last 2.5 decades. You can call them at 305-365-0129 or visit their website at rdcamma.com for more information in the show notes. Mr. B, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you very much for having me here, Alejandro. This is first time, so hopefully I can have a conversation with you without sounding like I don't know what I'm talking about. So,
we're excited to have you here on the show. My sister went to your class at St. Agnes. It's history, right?
I was history.
What is it any particular, just like civics or?
Well, it's changed over years, but basically social studies. I taught 6th grade world history, 7th grade civics, and 8th grade U.S. history, which is standard curriculum for the middle schools.
Yeah.
And if they learned anything from me, that's all I can ask for. So I hope she said some nice things about me.
Yeah, I don't, when, oh yeah, no, she did. It's interesting because when you try to look back to see how much you remember from your upbringing and education, I'm sure it's in there, but people sometimes remember more what they feel.
Yeah.
Feelings are the ones that, and they say that in business too. People will remember how they felt, not what you said. So I think that the impact that you have left on people's lives throughout the years has been what people remember, that you're a great teacher, that you're a great educator.
Well, then that's a privilege and an honor to be in that position. I don't take the knowledge part as serious as I might imply, but if you can teach them to be better people, to enjoy learning, to just have a little memory of a small part of their lives that is positive, then they can move forward and take care of all that other stuff on their own. I think the middle school age is about just enjoying that time that sometimes can be difficult. And if you can just let them have good memories, which whatever that might imply, then they're going to be fine. Then they move on. And then they all grow up. And then they all become like you, which is great, or like me, or like anybody else. Now I'm running into students who are parents, who are, in their 40s, and, we meet, and it's kind of funny. They still call me Mr. B, but really, is it any different? They're still within the challenges of being adults and raising children and everything else, and yet they still have a little memory of one small year at St. Agnes that kind of stays with them. What a great position to be in.
My sister was here down visiting from Texas with her 3 kids already.
Yeah.
And her husband, they drove to the Key to see the aunt and me and his her husband has a grandma in Hollywood, but they stayed here with me in the Key. So we had a great time. And when I mentioned that I was going to interview you, she was very excited. And so, say hello, say hello. He was a great teacher. But
always, it's funny. I met you. You reached out to me, and I knew the name. And then you send me pictures of your parents. I know these people. Everybody knows each other from one way or another, and so we're connected in the same way that Danny's connected. So your parents are great people.
Thank you. So, tell me what brought you to the Key?
Okay. So we go way back, right? I was born in Cuba, and my dad was a doctor. 1960, the first great movement of Cubans out of the Castro era occurred. And my dad had worked with the U.S. Armed Forces during the reconstruction of Europe after World War II. So he was assigned, and he was one of the lucky ones, he was assigned a position with a veterans hospital in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So this is 1960. I'm 2 years old. I have two older sisters, Sadi and Caro, who still, by the way, live on the Key. And we moved to Milwaukee. Maybe 2 or 3 other Cuban families there, and definitely, out of our comfort zone. It was, yet as a kid, it was great. It was, snow days and just living the American way of life. And we grew up that way. So, but right around 1966, my dad started to realize that the hopes of returning to Cuba were fading, and he saw, by now we were a family of 5. My brother Eduardo and my younger brother Victor, born in Milwaukee, suddenly started to of course, get comfortable there, and we were losing our mannerisms, our Cuban mannerisms, and I think my dad felt we needed to go somewhere where closer to home, as he would say. So we drove on down 1966, and it was the summer of 66, so I'm going into 3rd grade, and we drive down. Don't really know where we're going. How does a family of 5 jump in a station wagon and drive down from Milwaukee, Wisconsin to an island? This was kind of, we weren't prepared for this, at least as a kid. And it immediately felt like paradise. It was just amazing, especially growing up, being a kid. So we drive on to Key Biscayne. We get a little house on West Heather, the first house. These are old Mackles. This is Key Biscayne, 1966. It was just a small community, slowly developing, but surely not much here, which was perfect for a kid. I met that very first day a family that is still, I know Jack is still on the Key, the Macias. From that very first day, we became best friends, Jack and Alberto. And he took me to the beach, and it was amazing, and it took off from there. Had the best childhood ever, and it's never left me, I guess. The beach, there was no buildings on the beach. There was no, the village green was just a wooded area. There was no golf course or tennis courts where I guess the Ocean Club is now. It was just a giant field. The Ritz was an old Sheraton hotel. Grand Bay Club was an old coconut plantation for kids with a haunted barn, and don't go too far back in there because there are, guard dogs that would attack you. So what did we do? We go into the haunted barns and we challenge the guard dogs, and so it just took off from there, and I couldn't have had a better upbringing, and always been a part of me since then. So I don't know, how long has that been? 66 to 23, moving on 58 years. I better not date myself too much. So lucky to have found Key Biscayne, basically from the standpoint of how we got here, Cuba, Milwaukee, Key Biscayne.
So what was it like growing up in the Key?
Well, again, just as a kid, it was Africa. It was wilderness. It was mountain men. It was old man in the sea, except we weren't old. All rolled into one. It was a different era. And first, I'm going to say just simply that I think still to this day, Key Biscayne is the best place to grow up in. It's the best place to raise a family. It is just an amazing community. And even though it's certainly changed, I don't really think it has changed so much that it takes away from that experience. Key Biscayne is amazing, but in the late 60s and 70s, well, it's unincorporated Miami. It's a middle-class Mackle House community. Love technology and everything else, but there's no phones. There's no real way of keeping track of everyone. So there was an amazing amount of liberty that basically started with, Mom, I'm going out with my friends, and my mom saying, we'll be back for dinner. And that's who it was. And then, boom, we're out on our bikes, and every day was, especially in the summers, and every day was an adventure, and there was always something to do. And the Key Biscayne was the place to do it. So little supervision. And that wasn't a bad thing. It was a good thing. It was a place of raising families. So just in my block, just within, eventually we moved after a year to Harbor Court. And just in that block, there was the Macias, the Contes, the Portellas, who are still present in Key Biscayne, the Noonans, Larry in the back, and Andy, and the Warners, and the Mantillas. And, this was just a community. And every day we'd go to everybody's houses, and that was it. And the moms were great. They would feed us all, and then we'd jump on a bike and go. Any given day could have led to epic capture the flag games on bikes that would last all night, going to the beach. There was nothing on the beach except the old Key Biscayne Hotel, the Sheraton, and the greatest hotel on Key Biscayne, the Silver Sands, which is still there today. We could go diving there. We'd go fishing. There were great reefs right off the reefs. And that was just, hey, let's just go to the beach. And that's just how it went. I told you earlier, as we grow up, we used to go back in the mangroves and build these epic forts, just 2-story logs latched on, and it was just something you did. And then later the ski hole, which is where we spent, almost every day skiing. And then as we got a little older, it just kept going. We jump in our little boats. They're like 12-foot little aluminum boats with the best engine ever made, which was the Johnson 6-horsepower engine. Never broke down. And we'd go to Soldier's Key, which is kind of a protected island now, for a bird sanctuary. But back then it was just an island. We'd camp out there. And it was as simple as saying, Mom, we're going camping with Alberto and Jack and George. And that's just how it went. It just kept going and going. And then there was great memories there. I had the best childhood anyone could have.
And how did you call the area? But what's St. Agnes behind St. Agnes? What was the name for it?
Well, we were just kids, so we're building these forts, and we're going back there, and we have machetes and ropes, dragging ourselves through the mangroves, and we just think it's Africa. So we're just kids. We don't know anything, but so we named it something that seemed exotic and far away and just unreachable, because that's how we saw what we were doing. So we'd call it Afghanistan. And we're going back to Afghanistan today. And I know today it might have a different understanding, but back then it was just a name that we thought was a cool name for a wilderness.
So when did you notice Key Biscayne changing?
You don't see it as it's happening, but I think during the 1970s, I was old enough to know what was going on, at least within the daily news. And Richard Nixon was president, and he was a good friend of B.B. Rebozo, who was the president of the old Key Biscayne Bank. That's where the rec center is right now. And they were good friends. So he would come to Key Biscayne and live off the corner of Harbor Drive in this beautiful little cubby. I forgot the name of that little street. And it became known as the Winter White House. And there... Whenever President Nixon would come down, he'd go to the old Presbyterian church, which was right next to the St. Agnes Church. It's still there today. And, news cameras would come, and Key Biscayne started to get, I guess, a little bit of recognition. Where is this place in Miami? Miami was totally different also. And they built a helicopter pad in the back of his old house, and it's still there today. You can see it if you go to... it's called Mashta Point or Nixon Beach. It still has kind of funny names to it, where all the boats congregate on the weekends. And you'll see the helicopter pad there. It's still a presence. And so, whenever he came, it was on national news. And, early 1970s, a lot of a lot of big events were going on. The Vietnam War was winding down. The presidency was being challenged with Watergate and everything else. So there was a lot of news coverage here on Key Biscayne. And I think at that moment, it just, once the word started to get out. But I don't think it really changed to the degree that it is today until the 80s. And that was because you just can't hide this place. You just couldn't. The best place in Miami. And you can't just, keep that hidden for as long as it did. So it developed rather quickly, and not for the worst, but just natural growth, just like Miami, where the courthouse was the tallest building in Miami in the 1970s, and you can't even see it now because it's buried in the a jungle of skyscrapers. So it's kind of interesting. But when you live it, you don't analyze it. It was just you just kept going. So they built a golf course where we used to roam around, and we used to call it Rabbit Hill. Kind of, you talk to some old timers, Rabbit Hill was a place where it was an old dump, and rabbits used to run around there, and we used to go out there and try to catch rabbits. And now a golf cart comes, and there was, okay, big deal. Now we play golf on the golf club, And then the tennis courts came, and okay, big deal. And now we can't wait for the Miami Open to, it just was a growth that fit still in our lifestyle. The Shady Grove, which was kind of a pathway between Crandon and Hampton Lane, became the Village Green, and better than just just an old rundown, empty, parcel of land. So, all that just came, and we just went with it. And we still did the same things we did. We was playing flag football on Friday nights. It was fishing every day and diving every day. It was going to the beach club and spending hours there just walking the beach. It's funny, you as you grow, Key Biscayne grew, and we just grew together. It was great.
So as you kept growing here in the Key, how was your high school time or era look like? Where did you go to high school?
It's a little different now because the options were less. Almost everyone on the Key would go. I actually went to Key Biscayne Elementary, the community school, through 6th grade, and then people would go to generally Ponce Along Middle School. At that time, it was structured slightly different. And then they would just go to Gables, and that was it. That's what everyone did. My dad, who struggled with trying to maintain our Cuban heritage, wanted me to have a more Cuban experience, I guess, for lack of a better word. And he wanted me to go to Belen. Now today, like your eyes. Funny when I told you, Belen back in now today it's a fantastic school and a beautiful campus out west. But in the 1970s, it was on 8th Street, 8th and 8th.
Wow.
And I mean, it wasn't far from Key Biscayne, but it was a box building, no windows, no fields, run around the block, for PE. It was at first awkward, to say the least. And we went with a small group of Key Biscayne, and we were all Key Biscaynes and all friends, the Mantillas and the Warners and the Macias. Again, these are my lifelong friends, and we went, and it was I'm gonna say the word. It was like the Key Rats versus the kids from Gallo Ocho, and they're different but the same. And we all had Spanish surnames, but we didn't speak Spanish as well as our names would suggest, so we got a little hassle from that, and sometimes we didn't quite fit in, but it's funny. I guess you just live your life. So whatever those early memories were, by the time I graduated from Belen in '76, it was a great experience, and as you would have it, my friends would come to Key Biscayne, instead of me going to, 17th and 22nd, they'd want to come to Key Biscayne. And so, again, we just brought them over and we had a great time. We used to have barbecues and gatherings at Crandon Park. And it just fit. It never really changed much. And then they would come camping with us, and I'm proud to have graduated from Belen, and I still have good friends from that era, and I think it gave me what I needed to keep moving forward. But I did always want to go to Gables with the rest of my friends, but I never got that chance. I guess you don't question things. You just live your life, and you don't let it kind of take over your what you like to do. So those were good years. Those were great years. I really enjoyed it.
And so as you kept moving forward, then what about college, university?
In 1976, I graduated. I went to Tulane University, and again, just continuing my growth. Went to New Orleans. I guess there's no denying that that was a great place to go to school. It was a big change. I embraced it. It was a great town that I still love today. And I brought my Key Biscayne sensibilities over there and managed to graduate with a management degree, which,
Okay.
Where this goes is now the second part of the story. Up to that point, I was, just a kid. And like everyone who knows, all of us who go through it, and by the time when you graduate from college, all of a sudden your dad looks you in the eyes and says, now what? That might begin my second part, like everyone's life, second part of growing up. And it was, 1980, 81, I guess, now. Key Biscayne's changing. Still living on the Key, start getting jobs and start working, move off the Key if my job was paid enough to get an apartment, move back in when you change jobs. So even though I was starting to grow and move forward, I was still connected to this Key through my parents, my family, and we just kept moving. But in the 80s, I was primarily in the management business. I had various jobs in different locations.
For example, what did you work in?
Yeah. It's funny. I sometimes would tell my professional side of the story to my students, and they would kind of listen to it like, but I thought you were a teacher. And I go, maybe sometimes the best way to become a teacher is to do something else before you teach. So no, always worked. There was no option there, but I guess quickly, if it doesn't bore you, my first job was a sporting goods manager at an old retailer store called Best, not Best Buys, just Best. It was one of these service merchandise places. And then I became a pharmaceutical drug representative for the Bayer Aspirin Company. And I did pretty well there for about 2 years. I eventually got moved to South Carolina, where I was a regional sales manager there. So things were going well. There was the first time I really felt homesick. It was very strong in me that I just missed Key Biscayne. I had a house in South Carolina, right in Charleston. It was beautiful. Life was good. And yet, I missed home. So kind of worried everyone when I quit that job and came back home. But no time to rest. I got a job. I managed my own home healthcare business. Again, locked into a certain kind of expertise that was taking me in a certain direction.
And sorry, home health, what do you mean?
Home health care is providing medical equipment for the home.
Okay.
I must admit, I was horrible at it because this business during the 80s was an opportunity for a lot of new companies to take advantage of federal insurance money going into home health care as opposed to hospital care. So their whole deal was insurance, money, give you a bed or give you oxygen. But, people would call me up and say, I don't have insurance and I need oxygen. I can't breathe. And I just started giving away my equipment, for free. I just, you couldn't sometimes say no. And it bothered me a little bit, but it was a job. It was a job. And then just again, because I got locked into a certain expertise, I finally ended up working with a company that provided surgical and hospital supplies. And that was it. And that was really a good job. But by then I was done. I think I was 28, and I began to realize that I think my ideals never changed. Growing up on Key Biscayne, going to school at Belen and everything, I just wanted more out of my life. And that was it. I had a breakdown, a professional meltdown, and I quit my jobs. I came back to Key Biscayne. I went to school to see if I could get a degree in education. I think this is when, I guess there's a second story here, is somewhere along the line, I always believed I wanted to be a teacher.
Okay.
Mr. Barry in fourth grade, community school, just this dynamic individual who I just thought stuck with me. And it stuck with me for so long, that's what I had in mind. What a cool job this would be. And just though it was never stressed, it was never emphasized, and I was never pushed into any direction, I just think I believed that I needed to have a more traditional path. Young, male, Cuban, son of a doctor with a very solid reputation. I was driven by that, path of being successful in that way. But by 28, I threw that all up. I threw that all up. So went back to school. Didn't know if I could teach. So I took a job as a bus driver. That was going to be my first challenge. I was a school bus driver before I was anything. I went from making a lot of money to like $5 an hour to, dropping off kids. And I was a bus driver. And I liked it. I liked it. So that was kind of the beginning. So from a professional management position to a bus driver, and I like telling this story because I think you just have to be happy with what you do, and you have to find it. And there's that old saying, I guess, if you love your job, it's never work. I took a big chance. And I immediately realized that's what I wanted to do. And then there it went. It just took off from there. I worked at a museum as an educational, not director, but as an educational presenter.
Just to follow the track. So you went back to school to study education.
Yeah.
And then
I started working.
So after you finished the education?
No, this was ongoing. This was all.
So you were studying and working in the education.
Yes. No. This is, you're 28. There's no time to you got to work.
Oh yeah. Maybe your mom had an extra room. And you went back.
She did.
Okay.
Oh, I'm back home.
Okay.
And it wasn't easy. There's at 28, a lot of my friends are getting married. A lot of my friends are have great positions and starting their, have started their lives. So it was I can honestly say it was a difficult time for me. I was kind of alone at this. I did this on my own, and it wasn't easy. Everyone sometimes struggles with finding what they truly love to do, and I certainly can share that experience and that how that felt, because it was hard, but I loved it. And so I worked in the Historical Museum of South Florida, and we'd drive around schools and present little plays on Miami history, like The Barefoot Mailman. And then I got my first real job at a school downtown, just because the director knew my dad. Again, just trying to claw my way into some experience. And it was a funny little school, La Luz. Doesn't exist anymore. Certainly, a school where people who went there just were simple, and I got paid $10,000 a year, $1,000 a month, straight up at the beginning of every month. There's where I learned how to manage my money and everything else, and I learned that I was horrible at managing money. So, but again, that year was one of the greatest years, because it was really the first time I was in a classroom, and I felt the rewards I got from teaching middle school. So there's where it really begins. And then I got lucky. A friend of mine worked at St. Agnes. She called me up one day and said there was an opening in the school. Key Biscayne, living on Key Biscayne, St. Agnes. My brother went to St. Agnes, and I got a job. I got a job there through the phone. I talked to a new principal coming in called Sheila Cruz, my professional mother, who really took care of me, and she hired me through a telephone conversation. I still didn't have my teaching certificate. I was going to school. I was just trying to hang on. I lived at home, which was kind of difficult, but this was 1990, so I'm young 30. I would ride to school in a bike, and those were the early days. I was set. I couldn't have asked for just a better life choice. It was a gift. And here I am.
Uh-huh.
You know, whatever I am today, it was because of in 1990, I was hired by Mrs. Cruz off a telephone call.
So I want to take a little pause to thank 3G Tutoring here, my friend Juan, for lending me his space.
Can I add into something just to...
Yeah, of course.
And his name's Juan, because I met Juan. Alejandro, your two sponsors, I'm very well aware of. Sensei Robert DeZuglo. I taught both his children, Morgan and Derek. They're just amazing young adults now. I mean, I can tell you stories when they were 14, but I prefer to kind of recognize them today for what they've done to this community. And Mr. DeZuglo is a special person, and I have high respect for them. So he does what teachers do, make sure that young kids grow up to good, fine, young adults. And Juan from 3G Tutoring has a lot of our kids always preparing for high school entrance exams, and he does a fantastic job. Two great sponsors, both involved in teaching and education, but I think much more than that, building great people. I think the most important thing about our responsibilities.
Thank you. What I'm going to do, I saw like...
Yeah, I just know them both. I know that they you know them. They're same line of work to some extent.
No, 100%. And I feel like now I don't have to do the message anymore because you did such a great job. What a great way to have your guest, deliver a sponsor message. But I'll include it anyways. I'll say the sponsor message now in a second.
My first podcast and now my first commercial, so it's okay.
There we go. Podcast and commercial. Mr. B is a new thing that he's doing now.
Expanding my experiences once again.
Yeah. And we'll be right back after the RDCA sponsor. The Academy of Martial Arts in Key Biscayne, more commonly known as RDCA, is proud to have served as Island Paradise for 27 years. Join them for a free introductory class to kickstart your martial arts journey. RDCA is a family-run business headed by Sensei Robert Dusoglu with his daughter and son. Morgan and Derek, both senseis as well. They use martial arts, elite conditioning, and life quests, their self-guided enlightenment course to forge a stronger you. With over 100 years of combined martial arts experience between the Dusoglu senseis, RDCA provides a holistic approach to self-defense, covering a unique blend of stand-up, close-quarter combatives, technical groundwork, weapon training, and traditional form. Over 3,000 students have walked through their doors and trained on the mat at RDCA in the last 2.5 decades. You can call them at 305-365-0129 or visit their website at rdcamma.com for more information in the show notes. So back to Mr. B. So you're 30 years old, it's teaching at St. Agnes. So how was that experience?
Just first, it was just a perfect storm for me. Everything came together. All my concerns and all my desires of finding something I think really just gave me purpose really just came together. I grew up on the Key. I'm a Key rat. I have, a passion for Key Biscayne. I belong to St. Agnes Parish. It's part of my life. This is outside of a professional, story. I hope I didn't bore anyone with, my stories of my medical, professional career. Really, it was coming home. And so I immediately felt at home. I knew everybody. I knew teachers there. I knew, by then, friends of mine's kids were going to the school, and we would laugh because we would remember when we were that age, and we would always kind of comment on how we were much worse than they were. So don't worry about it; they'll all be fine. So that part was just natural. I really felt comfortable, and then I loved being a teacher. I always say I don't want to be a professor. I don't want to be an educator. I don't want to feel like I even need to, present information that has to be learned. I just want to teach them about just the love of learning and let them have fun and let them grow. And I just became a kid again. Everything I loved about Key Biscayne now became part of my teaching style. It was, go to the beach. If you live on an island and you don't go fishing, what kind of people are you? And that always became part of the relationship I had with the students. And so I had I could identify with them, and I guess I could be a teacher in any place, and yet being a teacher in Key Biscayne made me a better professional, without a doubt, because I brought in everything. I didn't just do lesson plans. I told them stories, and I told them about failures. Sometimes we get taken into a path that, sometimes doesn't offer what you're looking for in life or give you the satisfaction of just leading a good life. And then you got to remember, don't worry, don't have fear, pull yourself back and follow your heart. So it was natural. It was easy. And I really didn't have any teaching experience. I had limited experience, but I guess I pulled it off because I was a kindred spirit. I felt comfortable there. Reciting historical facts is easy, but making it fun or enjoyable or it requires just more to it, like comfort and relationships and stuff. So I guess I have 3 decades of talking about it, and they all are also an evolution of my my growth also. But, the 90s were me learning how to be a teacher. Made a lot of mistakes. Very unconventional learning as I go. And yet people had faith in me and they trusted me. And that was very important. And then during the next decade, I guess I got comfortable in what I was doing. But I was getting older, and in my 30s, you could still kind of be the cool young teacher. But, now I'm becoming I should say, I gotta say this. I'll say it in a minute. This is important, though, but I want to finish this train of thought from a professional standpoint. During the next decade, the 2000s, I became established. I really settled in, and I gave everything I had to the school. And that's something that I didn't even expect would happen. The school became my life, and it was easy. I can't even explain it, but St. Agnes was my life. So I coached and I participated. I developed programs. I wanted to make St. Agnes a great little school. And I was given that opportunity through the administrators that came during that period too. I never wanted to be an administrator, ever. I think my role was in the classroom, but that role began to expand, understanding that outside the classroom, the school was just as important. And then in the last decade, the last 10 years, I guess I just became a personality. I don't know what that means in a larger scope, but, I got the respect of a community. I got the expectations that everyone wanted. Can't wait to get to your class. And that was, what a gift. What a gift. And I'm grateful for that. Everything I've done or I've given, it never was with the expectation of anything. But the best part of all our jobs is at the end of the year, everyone says thank you. And not a lot of jobs give you that simple reward that's worth more than anything that I can think of. But so there, growth. And from a rookie who's lucky to have survived those early years to, someone who I guess loved what he did enough to achieve and receive the respect of community. That's just more than I thought I would ever have. So that was important. But I'm sorry, I don't know. Go ask a question.
I was just going to say that, I mean, your impact to the community has been huge, because I didn't go to St. Agnes, but I knew of you, through my sister and through her experience to your class. And I'm sure, and I know a couple of other teachers, Nikki as well, but I'm sure there's more than just a handful of teachers. So for your style, the way that you delivered your classes, your friendships that you developed, and the way that you did it, it was in such a way that it touched people in a different way, in a particular way that they wanted to share the good news of Mr. B's class. And there's something about giving out free candies. I think that was really what made it.
I think bribery is a perfect strategy for reaching young minds, and if it's a little Jolly Rancher, so be it. I will not be ashamed of any tactic that I use to reach a young mind. But it goes to show you that it's just play. Really, we don't need to take it too seriously, and I think the students respond to that. I'm serious. I have focus and purpose, but you can't let that take over. The relationships you develop. I think that's important. But yes, a lot of candy involved. You threw that at me. Yeah.
That's what my little
that is true.
My little cousin.
Yeah,
she was looking forward to your class, but now that you're moving on. But that's what she said. She said that, did you know he gives free candy?
Yeah.
So but
I did.
You mentioned,
but they had to work for it. It wasn't just free.
Oh, okay.
I have to admit, I was, unless they caught me in a good moment, most of it had to be earned.
Okay, good. So you had something you wanted to share. You didn't want to interrupt your previous train of thought. So
yeah,
what was it?
Again, I was going to say thank you for having me here. And we're talking about my life, and it revolves around Key Biscayne. It always has. And I think that's my story. Growing up here, being a teacher here, it's just more than that. Key Biscayne is my life. And to put it all into perspective, and if you kind of follow the story I've told, I grew up on the Key. I have best friends here. I'm still connected. But then as you grew, you went away and you realized what you missed, and you come back, and then you struggle, and you're not sure where your life is going, and you get an opportunity to start over again on Key Biscayne. And then you grow professionally and your dreams start coming true, but then it just keeps going. Just to let you know, I met my wife at St. Agnes Academy. So
was she another teacher?
She was another teacher.
Oh,
yeah, she was. But but important to note that we were set up by our principals. So it was nothing, we didn't break any handbook rules, I don't think. At least we only would get paid 10 months out of the year. So during the summer, I had to work. I would paint the school. I'd paint the classrooms, just keep me busy again. So here's the summer. I'm on summer break, but, I'm still working as a handyman. And it's the end of the summer. And during those days, I kept the same clothes I had from the first day. So by the end of the summer, whatever I was wearing was full of paint, and, everything was full of paint. And the last classroom I walked into to paint, there was this young girl with another guy, and she was a new teacher. And she was setting up. I excused myself, and I started to paint. And, we didn't have much dialogue, but so be it. Then the first day of school came, and I went. I've already been there for 4 years, and she thought it was great that they would this school must be the best school in the world because they even invite the painters to start the school year. And of course, awesome. The person she was talking to said, no, that's not the painter, that's Mr. B. And then, later on, as this story unfolds, which later in the afternoon, I was, I'm Mr. B, and nice to meet you. And, I kind of edged my way into, when I met you, I guess your boyfriend was helping you out. I think that's great. And she goes, no, that's my brother. So, our first impressions took us off a little bit, but then I met her, and I proposed to her in front of the whole school, in a morning assembly that we would normally have. And, she was a first grade teacher. I was an 8th grade teacher. This was the place. This was the place. And we got married at St. Agnes Church, and the students sang in our choir and were a part of the ceremony. And then we started having children, and, the students were very much a part of that era, and they got baptized there. And so in the end, whatever the end is, which I don't think it is, Key Biscayne is all I've ever known in one way or another. And that's the real kind of message I want to say, that I'm a product of a great community. And I've had a great life, and I've been fortunate to be here talking about it, because I never thought I would. So that's that. We can go back to, giving away free oxygen if you want. But I think that's important to share, because really that's my Key Biscayne story. It's a life. I may not be working at St. Agnes anymore, but, my sisters live here. Last night I was at a birthday party of my brother, his 60th, and we were over at, at the Marine Marine School, and we had a party there. We're still coming back. I'm still very my Polly. After this, I'm going to go to the Sir Pizza and have a pizza, because I still love that tradition. Not many old businesses still here, so the story continues.
So tell me, how did you incorporate your experience and your time in the Key into your classroom, into your teaching experience?
Well, it was easy. Every day there were stories to tell, and history is stories. That's all it is. And so if the kids were very smart and they knew how to distract me, in the middle of talking about the War of 1812, and they just asked me about, did you play flag football on Key Biscayne? There would go 40 minutes of me talking about it. But my classroom also became my historical love of just living on Key Biscayne. I would have an entire wall of old Key Biscayne pictures, and I got them, by the way, by I think the Key Biscayne Historical Society has a site on the web, and I would just find, copy and paste them, and I put them on paper, and I'd had all these old pictures of Mashta Point and the Marine Stadium, when they used to have hydroplane races, which as kids we would go and wouldn't miss it for anything. And then the old old pictures of Key Biscayne before houses were built, and there and the kids would could come in and kind of just see what Key Biscayne was and still is. So that was very important. I also had all kinds of artifacts from old Miami, like I found an old Flagler railroad spike that I'd found on Key Biscayne in the park when I was a kid, and little stories like that. So if they found something that interested them, there was always a story attached to it. And then kids started to bring gifts to me, and it was always a knick-knack from where they had gone. And Mr. B, I was in Egypt, and I remember you talking about this, and here's a pen, or here's a poster and everything. And so every time they gave me something, it would go up in the room, and then just after 30 years, it became like an old house filled with memories. And it was and again, it was still centered on Key Biscayne. So the room kind of took a little my own personality and helped in my presentations, I guess, and they felt comfortable there. So that's cool. I still have the pictures. I love old Key Biscayne pictures. So yeah, once again, it was all easy, and it was just it's my story, it's our story, it's everyone's story, and it's easy to tell to people who belong to the story. The students of Key Biscayne.
So what other things do you remember that used to be here in the Key that no longer exist?
That's a great question. There's just little things, and everyone represents just a little memory, but just with no particular order. Mashta Point was this empty lot where the old Mashta house was, and now it's the $40 million property, but back then it was an empty lot, and we'd drive bikes out there, and it was a tradition of seeing the sunset there, and there was no better place in all of Miami, in anywhere, to see a better sunset than right there. And again, it was just ours. It wasn't anybody else's, and that was essential to our daily routine. The old Key Biscayne Hotel, which is pretty much where Ocean Club is now. Old hotel, and they had this Olympic-sized swimming pool with a high dive, a springboard, and no one had these high springboards, and we'd go over there, sneak in, and bounce off this 30-foot board, and kind of thought it was jumping off cliffs. So that was great. They also had a little par 3 golf course right on that property, right by the water, which was great. The beach club, it's still here, but that was required visiting on a daily basis. Moving over to the Silver Sands, which is a great little hotel, but on the top, on the roof, they had a bar restaurant, and it was called the Eagle's Nest. And we'd go up there and listen to Louis Aber something, and he would play, and we'd, the locals would hang out there. There was reefs, like I'd mentioned earlier, right off the beaches back then, and we didn't have to go very far. There was an old restaurant bar called the people who grew up in the Key during my time all know these things, and they'd just come and gone. But where the square is, I used to have this restaurant called the Jamaica Inn and the English Pub, which was the old Crandon Park Zoo, which is now the Quiet Gardens. That was amazing, because as a kid you would go over there and you had a zoo as your playground, and yet it also came into our lives every night. Right around sunset, the lions would roar right before getting fed, and you would hear it. It was just a daily sound of lions roaring, and you're on Key Biscayne. You're in you're not supposed to hear lions. And then they had an old train, a little train. There's pictures of it. It's really interesting. That would take people around the property, but as kids, we would hide behind trees and try to jump on it, and we were thinking like we're a bunch of cops and robbers, train robbers in the Western days, and the conductor would stop the train and chase us out, and we'd kind of run back into the bushes. All those things. There was a little, everyone knows in Crandon Park, there's a merry-go-round, but that was active till then. There was a little roller skating ring right next to it. It's still there, but it has a different function now. These were all part of our playground. The yacht club, skiing. I've mentioned skiing off the ski hole, which is in the mangroves, which was the best place. It's kind of closed off now as a manatee zone, which is all good, but back then it was just open and without considerations.
You mentioned the keyhole, the old one, not the recent old one, but the old one.
The keyhole was a small little bar. It maybe was the local dive where people would go at night. It was dark. It wasn't very big. It had a solid door with a little kind of porthole that you would look into, and fishermen and people would come after a day of beaching or boating, and there's where they would all gather. And it was, I think, just right now where the mobile gas station is on the corner. So I miss the Oasis, which was pretty not much now, where weirdos donuts and weirdos that's a new place, fantastic, but that used to be the Oasis, which was required eating. And right now where the fire station was, I'm getting a lot of memories, so I apologize. Right by where the gas station, where the fire station is now, there used to be a gas station there with no gas. And it sold pan con bistec. And that's all they sold. And there was little mechanics on it. And they had, and if you ask anyone, Amcar, it's called Amcar. And if you ask anyone, it had the best pan con bistecs in all of Miami. And that was our dive, but there was nothing better. It was like, it had, and the especial, it was a palomilla steak with cheese, onions, bacon, the papitas, on Cuban bread. And that was, I'm getting hungry. Sir Pizza, it was our mall as growing up. It was where everyone congregated, and that's where we hung out as kids. In our early teens, those 11, 12, and 13-year-old years. It just goes on and on and on, and those are just places that we just lived with every day, and it would be a part of our days, and so I guess I could keep going on.
I have a question.
Sure.
It's probably the most important question out of all of them, is how do you eat your Sir Pizza?
Squares with pepperoni. And no, I'm not Italian.
He doesn't dip.
I do not dip with creamy garlic. What is the?
I grew up with the ranch.
The ranch.
But now I upgrade. I have taken it to the next level, which a lot of people don't agree, which is the blue cheese.
Yes.
I dip in the blue cheese.
I do not object to it, but I'm a purist. I'm a traditionalist. A medium cheese or medium pepperoni, and I'm 50 years in on it. So it's good. It's good, and it's strange. It hasn't changed. I mean, maybe it has or maybe it hasn't, but in your mind, it's still the same pizza that it's always been. So yeah, definitely Sir Pizza.
Have you tried the burgers there?
I guess I've tried everything. Our go-to was the Crusader sandwich. The Crusader sub. That's when we wanted to eat without sharing. It was the Crusader. And all those places. Calusa Park was still here, and it was big. And that's where that was where we probably initiated a lot of our explorations in Afghanistan, and just places that no longer exist, but except in our minds. Now it's even better because there's more places to eat that are fantastic, and it's for other people's memories to have. So that's great. One of our favorite things to do, I guess, thinking about memories, was we would walk from the beach club to Cape Florida. And, maybe that doesn't sound like much now, but there was nothing there. There was no buildings. There weren't the towers or Casa del Mar. There was nothing. And that walk was maybe a mile, but for a 12-year-old, that was just, going on a journey. And water was crystal clear. There were sharks, and there were
No sarcasm?
No. Well, yeah, there always was, but you know what there was? I thought you meant sarcasm. I don't always sarcasm. That's there was strange, and people who remember this, there was a lot of tar, just goo, oil residue.
Is that the thing that would stick to your feet?
Yes.
And then,
yes.
Because I remember when we would come for my grandfather got a place in the Allen House.
Uh-huh.
And we would come from Peru.
Yeah.
And I remember going to the beach, and then they used to have this thing in by the door where with alcohol.
Yeah.
You'd rub the little pieces of.
Oh yeah.
That was tar.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, there was a lot of it. It was often attached to sargassum and stuff like that. But the beach club has their little showers, and right by the at the end of a long day, you go to the shower, rinse yourself off. And there would be a big jug of turpentine or kerosene or mineral spirits or whatever. Uh-huh. And yeah, we would sit down with a rag and wipe it off. I think it's gotten a little better now.
Yeah, I think I've experienced it.
But that's the memory more than the weeds. But the walk was great, and it was beautiful, and the water was always clear. And again, living on an island, we embraced the ocean. It was central to our lives. That was it. Go fishing every opportunity you want. Go diving, diving, and right here, right off in the finger channels, Stillsville. Mm-hmm. What an amazing place! And back then there was a lot more houses, and over time, many of them have been, kind of destroyed and wrecked. Mm. Or knocked down, and we used to sleep on those things. We would kind of come in there, and again, our boats were not the big contenders and not the the twin Yamahas. They were 12-foot aluminum boats with our trusty Johnsons, and we wouldn't think twice of going back there and sneaking on one of the platforms and sleeping overnight there, and we fish all night, and we're kids. We were, this all was happening when we were 15 and 14, and I'm glad I lived in that period, because our parents didn't have a choice but to trust us. They and it didn't take much to just say, we're going with the same names we always said, Jack and George and Bill, and we're gonna go camping for it. We didn't bring anything. We'd catch our food, and we learned how to cook that way. And again, just how many places give you that opportunity, to as a kid to grow up in. So Stillsville, just another one of those memories, and I still have special place, as that's a beautiful sight. And if you're at the point or you're on a boat and you see it, it's still a beautiful sight. It's still there today, but the bike path that goes from it starts right at the Quiet Gardens and goes all the way to the first bridge. You go back in there. That was always a cool ride, It always seemed a lot longer when you were kids than it is today. You took advantage of it. We played sports all the time. There wasn't an organized league, but flag football on Friday night. Friday night lights were huge, in a field right next to the old Presbyterian church. We played our cycles. We played baseball, then we would play flag football, then we'd play soccer. It's an odd thing, but there was we never allowed ourselves to be bored, but not intentionally. It just we just didn't know anything else. We just let's go, and every day was that, and I think it's kind of still the same today. You go to school, 3:00 ends. And what do? You jump on a bike and you go to the village green. You go to the rec center. If you want, you go have a pizza. You do everything, and it just continues. And I think that the young people here living on the Key today are still doing the same things we did, just in a different, with just different locations or different opportunities.
Yeah.
And then, again, that's why this is a great place, really. You don't do that. So my kids, I have 3 boys, and my kids are growing up, and we live now in Miami, just good old Miami. And they're getting 8, 9, and 10, and they have friends, and they nearby. And, Dad, can I go take my bike to Dito's house? Yeah, sure. And then my wife comes out, are you crazy? You can't let them out. They'll get run over, they'll get kidnapped, they'll get lost, and I'll go, and I caught all the time, because my mannerism was more how my mom was, come back by dinner, and I just couldn't help it. But my wife has more sensibilities than I do, and she's crazy, we'll take you, we'll pick you up, and I kind of felt bad for my kids. Not that they knew any different, but that's something that is still kind of present here on the Key. You have a certain kind of openness that, to some extent, protects you. It's still a closed community. And you got the phones and got everything else that helps, which is great. That was a bonus growing up, for sure.
Mr. B, this has been amazing to have you on the show, to get your story. We have a lot of history here in the Key, so I look forward to share with everybody. As a closing question, so what does Mr. B do for fun?
Good question, because I probably,
today, for fun today.
Yeah, but I probably do the same thing I did when I was a kid. Yesterday I went to the beach with my wife. Last week I was fishing, off Key Biscayne. I still have that routine that I loved as a kid, being a part of my life. The interesting thing is that now I do it with my kids, and my boys are not young anymore, and when they were young, I introduced them to fishing and diving, and they love the beach and riding bikes and all this thing. And now that they're older, I kind of just watch them enjoying what I enjoy, and that is something that I'm very proud of. My youngest son loves fishing, and my middle son is a great diver. He dives a lot. He's really good. And my oldest son is a photographer, and I used to love photography, and so we've kind of we share our passions, and if they pick it up, you're happy, because then you get to live through them. So I'll probably go to serve pizza.
Sounds good.
Have a medium pepperoni with no ranch. I'm sorry, but
okay.
I'm traditionalist.
It's all right.
I will go see my sisters who live on the Key, and then go home. But tomorrow I'll be back, and I'll probably eat, sleep, and repeat. That's why I love Miami. because I do the things that I've always loved doing on Key Biscayne. I love the ocean. I love my family. And in the end, that's all you really need, at least in my life, to be happy. So I want to thank you for having me here. It's odd talking about, these memories, and I share them with you because it reflects the community we live in. And we talked a little while ago that, it's changed, but change is not something bad. Change is just natural. We've all changed. I'm not the same person I was, the first day I came to Key Biscayne in 1966, and yet it's still Key Biscayne. So it's been fun. It's been fun talking about these things I hadn't thought about in a while, and maybe we can make some more memories as we move along.
The Academy of Martial Arts in Key Biscayne, more commonly known as RDCA, is proud to have served this island paradise for 27 years. RDCA is a family-run business headed by Sensei Robert Dusoglu with his daughter and son, Morgan and Derek, both senseis as well. They use the martial arts, elite conditioning, and life quest, their guided self-enlightenment course, to forge a stronger you. With over 100 plus years of combined martial arts experience between the Dusoglu senseis, RDCA provides a holistic approach to self-defense, covering a unique blend of stand-up, close-quarter combatives, technical groundwork, weapons training, and traditional forms. Over 3,000 students have walked through the doors and trained on the mat at RDCA in the last 2.5 decades. They are proud to continue this legacy today and pass on their knowledge to the next generation of future black belts and life questers. Join them for a free introductory class to kickstart your martial arts journey. You can call them at 305-365-0129 or visit their website at rdcamma.com. For more information, you can check out the show notes.